The council chamber floated high above the planet Vex Prime. Inside the massive station, Ambassador Daniel Hayes stood alone before the 12 alien leaders who ruled the galaxy. He wore his best uniform, dark blue with gold buttons that caught the strange purple light filtering through the dome. His hands were steady, though his heart beat fast against his ribs. 3 years had passed since Earth made first contact with the Galactic Council. 3 long years of Daniel traveling between stars, meeting strange creatures, learning impossible languages, and trying to convince the galaxy that humans deserved a place among them. He thought he had made progress. He thought they were listening. The Krell leader, Chancellor Vrex, rose from his seat. He looked like a giant praying mantis, his body covered in dark green armor. When he spoke, a small device on his chest translated his clicks and buzzes into words Daniel could understand. "Ambassador Hayes, you have been tried and found guilty," Vrex said. His voice sounded cold through the translator. "Your species has expanded too quickly. You have built weapons without permission. You refused to limit your population as we commanded. These are crimes against the established order." Daniel felt his stomach drop. "Crimes? We have followed every treaty. We have respected your borders. All we have done is defend ourselves and grow as any species would." Another council member spoke. This one was a Zorath, a being that looked almost like floating jellyfish with too many tentacles. "You do not understand your place, human. We have maintained peace in this galaxy for 10,000 years. Your kind has been traveling in space for barely 2 centuries. You are children who found matches and think you understand fire." "Then teach us," Daniel pleaded. "That is why I am here. That is why Earth sent me. We want to learn. We want to be part of your community." "You want to be our equals," Vrex corrected. "That is not possible. Not for centuries, perhaps not for millennia. You must be controlled before you hurt yourselves or others." Daniel straightened his shoulders. He thought of home, of Earth hanging in space like a blue marble. He thought of his wife and daughter waiting for him to return. He thought of the 5 billion humans who trusted him to speak for them. "We will not be controlled," he said quietly. "We will not accept limits on who we are or what we can become. If that is a crime in your eyes, then your laws are unjust." The council chamber fell silent. Daniel could hear his own breathing loud in his ears. The 12 aliens looked at each other, communicating in ways he could not see or hear. Finally, Vrex stood again. "Then you leave us no choice. As a message to your species, you will be executed immediately. Perhaps your death will teach humanity the humility it lacks." Daniel opened his mouth to protest, to argue, to fight back with words since he had no other weapons, but the energy beam hit him before he could speak. There was a moment of searing pain and then nothing at all. The execution was broadcast across every human colony, every ship, every station. Within minutes, the video reached Earth. President Helen Morrison was in a meeting when her assistant burst through the door, his face white as paper. "Madam President, you need to see this. Right now." She followed him to the communication center, where a dozen screens showed the same horrible scene on repeat. Daniel Hayes, their ambassador, humanity's voice to the stars, dying on his feet in front of the alien council. The room was completely silent except for the sound of the recording. Helen watched it 3 times. Her face showed nothing, but her hands gripped the edge of the table so hard her knuckles turned white. When she finally spoke, her voice was calm and cold. "Get me Admiral Cole, get me the Joint Chiefs. Get me every leader of every nation on Earth. We meet in 1 hour." The emergency meeting took place in Geneva, in a room deep underground that had been built for exactly this kind of crisis. The most powerful humans on Earth gathered around a long table. No one spoke until Helen arrived. She did not sit down. She stood at the head of the table and looked at each person in turn. "You have all seen what happened. The Galactic Council executed our ambassador during a peaceful diplomatic mission. They did not declare war. They did not offer any trial by our laws. They simply killed him to make a point." Admiral Richard Cole, the head of Earth's military forces, spoke carefully. "Madam President, if we respond with force, we will be fighting the entire galaxy. Thousands of worlds, millions of ships. We are one planet." "One planet they just made a terrible mistake against," Helen replied. "We have prepared for this possibility. Every simulation, every war game, every secret project we have run for the last 50 years assumed that someday the galaxy might reject us, might see us as a threat. Today proved we were right to prepare." A general from the European Union leaned forward. "Are you talking about Protocol Blackout?" Helen nodded slowly. "Yes, we activate Protocol Blackout immediately. Every human in council space comes home. Every ship, every colony, every civilian. We give them nothing to target except Earth itself, and then we show them what happens when you murder a human under a flag of peace. This is total war, someone said. There is no going back from this. They made that choice when they killed Daniel, Helen said. Her voice was still calm, but now there was something hard beneath it, something sharp and dangerous. He went to them believing in peace. He died believing we could find a way to coexist. I will honor his memory by making sure the galaxy never forgets what they did. And by making sure they never do it again to anyone else. She pressed a button on the table. Red lights began flashing throughout the room. Execute Protocol Blackout. Recall all civilian vessels within 24 hours. Activate all military reserves. Deploy the fleet, and send a message to the Galactic Council. Tell them we are coming. Tell them that humanity does not forgive. We do not forget. And we do not accept this injustice. Around the table, people began moving, making calls, giving orders. Within minutes, the machinery of war was in motion. Across Earth and all her colonies, humans heard the same message. The galaxy had executed their ambassador. Now Earth was going to answer. And that answer would be written in fire and steel across the stars. Daniel Hayes had died believing in peace. Now humanity would fight a war to make that peace possible. But first, they would make the galaxy understand the cost of their arrogance. Part 2. The first thing the Galactic Council noticed was the silence. Within 18 hours of Daniel Hayes' execution, every human ship in council space began moving. Trade vessels hauled goods across the galaxy suddenly changed course and headed toward human territory. Scientific expeditions studying distant stars packed up their equipment and left. Cultural exchange programs ended overnight, with human students and teachers simply vanishing. On the border worlds, human colonies evacuated so quickly it seemed impossible. Entire settlements emptied in hours. They left behind crops burning in the fields, buildings with doors still open, playgrounds with toys scattered in the dirt. It was like watching ghosts disappear. Then all communication stopped. Every human embassy went dark. Every message channel closed. Every frequency that humans had used fell silent. It was as if humanity had simply stopped existing. Chancellor Vrek stood in the council chamber, watching reports flood in from across the galaxy. His mandibles clicked nervously, a habit he had when worried. "What are they doing?" he demanded. "Retreating," suggested one council member. "They know they cannot fight us. They are hiding in their system, hoping we will forget about them." But Thex, the young Zorath representative, was not convinced. He had studied humans more than most council members. He had read their history, their literature, their wars. "No," he said quietly. "This is not retreat. This is preparation." "Preparation for what?" Vrex asked. "They are one planet. We are thousands of worlds. What can they possibly prepare that would threaten us?" Thex tried to reach out with his mind, to sense human thoughts across the distance. His species could read minds across vast spaces, could feel the emotions and intentions of other beings. But when he reached toward human space, he found nothing. There was a wall there, something blocking his telepathy completely. "They have shielded themselves," he said, genuine fear in his mental voice. "Some kind of barrier surrounds their entire territory. I cannot sense anything beyond it." "Impossible," Vrex scoffed. "Such technology would require more power than their entire civilization produces." But the barrier held. Days passed, then weeks, then a full month. The silence from human space continued. The council tried everything. They sent scout ships to investigate. The ships crossed into human territory and their signals stopped instantly. Not destroyed, not captured, just gone. The ships sent automated probes. The probes crossed the border and disappeared the same way, as if swallowed by darkness. More concerning were the reports from frontier stations. Council outposts on the edges of human space were going silent. Sometimes they managed to send brief distress calls before communications cut off. Sometimes they just stopped responding. When other ships arrived to investigate, they found the stations empty. No signs of battle, no bodies, just empty corridors and flickering lights. Ships began disappearing too. A Vendar merchant convoy here, a Krell patrol there, always at the borders, always near human space. Never any wreckage, never any survivors. Trade started to suffer throughout council space. Humans had not been a huge part of the galactic economy, but they had been growing. Their sudden absence created holes in supply chains. Goods that humans transported needed new carriers. Resources that humans mined had to come from somewhere else. Prices began rising. Merchants began complaining. "This cannot continue," Councillor Drath of the Vendar said at an emergency meeting. His species valued profit above almost everything, and this situation was bad for business. "We must either negotiate with the humans or destroy them. This uncertainty is costing everyone." Negotiate? Vrex's mandibles clicked angrily. "We executed their ambassador for refusing to submit to our authority. Do you really think they want to negotiate?" Thex spoke up again. "In human history, when an ambassador is killed during peace talks, there is only one response that follows. Every time, without exception." "What response?" Several council members asked together. "Total war," Thex said. "Not war for territory or resources. Not war with rules and honor. War for survival. War where everything is permitted and nothing is sacred. They call it annihilation warfare." The council chamber fell silent. These aliens had maintained peace for 10,000 years. They had forgotten what real war looked like. They had become comfortable, soft, certain of their superiority. Meanwhile, in the Sol system, humanity was anything but soft. Every shipyard in human space worked without stopping. Around Mars, massive construction frames held new warships that looked nothing like council vessels. Where council ships were round and smooth, human ships were angular and sharp. Where council ships relied on shields and energy weapons, human ships carried armor and projectile weapons that council scanners could not detect until too late. The shipyards around Jupiter built even larger vessels, carriers that could launch thousands of fighter craft. Saturn's rings became mining operations, harvesting ice and rock and metal to feed the war machine. The asteroid belt was stripped of resources so quickly that environmental groups stopped protesting. Everyone understood what was at stake. Captain Lisa Grant stood on the bridge of the ECS Valiant, watching through the viewport as her ship took shape around her. She had trained for 15 years to command a vessel like this. She had studied every battle in human history. She had learned tactics from ancient Earth wars and adapted them for space combat. Now she would finally see if all that training meant anything. "Captain," her second-in-command called out. Lieutenant Jake Morris was young but sharp, exactly the kind of officer this new Navy needed. "Admiral Cole is transmitting to the fleet." Lisa straightened her uniform and faced the main screen. Admiral Richard Cole appeared, his face serious and tired. Behind him she could see the command center on Earth, where hundreds of people coordinated the largest military operation in human history. "All personnel, this is Admiral Cole," he began. His voice was steady and clear. "By now you all know what happened to Ambassador Hayes. You know that the Galactic Council executed him without trial, without mercy, without honor. They did this to make us afraid, to make us submit, to show us our place in their order." He paused, and Lisa saw something hard in his eyes. "They succeeded in one thing. They showed us exactly what kind of beings we are dealing with. They showed us that diplomacy with them is impossible. That peace on their terms means slavery, so we will give them peace on our terms instead." Another pause. Around Lisa, her crew stood perfectly still, listening. "Our mission is simple. The Council believes we are weak because we are young. They think we cannot threaten them because we control only one system. They are wrong. We have studied them for 3 years. We know their strengths and their weaknesses. We know their trade routes and their defenses. We know which worlds are vital and which are merely symbols. And we have prepared for this day since the moment we met them." Cole's image shifted to show a star map. Red dots marked Council territories. Blue dots marked human positions. And green lines showed attack routes that spread across the galaxy like a web. "We will strike at Vex Prime first, not to destroy it, but to show them we can. Then we will dismantle their council, system by system, world by world, until they understand that humanity will not be controlled. We will not accept subjugation. We will not forgive this crime." The map disappeared and Cole's face returned. "Some of you will not come home. Some of you will die far from Earth, fighting beings you barely understand, for a cause that seems impossible. But you will die knowing that you fought for humanity's freedom, for our right to exist on our own terms, for our children's right to grow up in a galaxy that respects them rather than fears them." Lisa felt her throat tighten. She looked around at her crew and saw the same emotion on their faces. Fear and determination mixed together. "All ships, prepare for jump coordinates. Target destination, Vex Prime. We leave in 6 hours." Cole out, the screen went dark. For a moment, nobody moved. Then Jake spoke quietly. 6 hours until we start a war with the entire galaxy. Lisa nodded. 6 hours until we show them what humanity really is. Not victims, not children, but survivors who will do whatever it takes to remain free. She turned to her crew. All hands battle stations. Weapons crew, charge all systems. Marines, prepare for possible boarding actions. Navigator, plot our jump as soon as you receive coordinates. This is not a drill. This is war. Around her, the crew moved with purpose. Outside the viewport, hundreds of other ships did the same. The human fleet was ready. The galaxy was about to learn what happened when you killed a human ambassador under a flag of peace. The silence was about to end, and it would end with fire. Part 3. The Galactic Council Station had stood in orbit around Vex Prime for 6,000 years. Its shields were legendary, built with technology from a dozen ancient races. 20,000 beings lived and worked inside, including the 12 council members themselves. The station was supposed to be the safest place in the galaxy. The humans appeared without warning. The station's sensors detected something wrong 8 seconds before the fleet arrived. Space itself seemed to twist and bend, creating ripples that made no sense. Then suddenly the human fleet was there. 400 capital ships, 800 smaller vessels, 2,000 fighters, all in perfect formation, all with weapons already charging, but they did not fire at the station. Not yet. Instead, every human ship turned toward Vex Prime itself. The planet below was beautiful, covered in blue oceans and green continents. It was home to 5 billion beings from 100 different species, a neutral world, a symbol of peace. Captain Lisa Grant stood on the bridge of the Valiant, her hands gripping the command chair. All weapons, target the coordinates Admiral Cole provided. Fire on my mark. Captain, Jake said beside her, his voice uncertain. Those coordinates are all on the planet's surface. There are cities there. The cities were evacuated 3 weeks ago, Lisa said quietly. Every civilian, every child. We have been extracting them secretly for a month. There is nobody down there but empty buildings. Jake's eyes widened. The disappearing ships. The silent outposts. We were not attacking. We were rescuing. Humanity does not make war on innocents, Lisa confirmed. But we will destroy symbols. Fire. The kinetic impactors launched from every human ship at once. They were simple weapons, really. Just dense metal cylinders accelerated to 70% of light speed. No explosives needed. At that velocity, anything they hit would simply vaporize from the energy of impact. They struck Vex Prime like the fist of an angry god. Each impact released more energy than a nuclear weapon. The ocean boiled where the first impactors hit, creating steam clouds that rose 50 miles high. The continents cracked where others struck, causing earthquakes that rippled around the entire planet. Tidal waves a kilometer tall swept across coastlines. Volcanoes that had been dormant for millennia erupted all at once. Within 5 minutes, Vex Prime was unrecognizable. The beautiful blue and green world was now covered in brown dust and red fire. It would take centuries to recover. It would never be the same. On the council station, alarms screamed. Chancellor Vrex watched through the viewing dome as the planet died below him. What have you done? He broadcast on all frequencies. There were billions of innocents on that planet. Admiral Cole's face appeared on every screen in the station. His expression was carved from ice. We evacuated them, Cole said calmly. Every single civilian. We spent the last month pulling them out while you wondered what we were doing. We do not kill innocents. But you executed our ambassador. You declared war through your actions. This is our response. This is insanity, Vrex screamed. You cannot win. We control thousands of worlds. Your worlds have not seen war in 10,000 years, Cole replied. Your militaries are ceremonial. Your defenses are outdated. Your entire civilization has become soft and complacent. You forgot what war really means. We did not forget. We could not afford to forget. The human fleet turned toward the station, every weapon locked on target, shields to maximum. Someone on the station screamed. The legendary shields activated, creating a glowing barrier around the massive structure. They had withstood meteor strikes, solar flares, even direct hits from Council warships during tests. They were supposed to be unbreakable. The human fleet opened fire. Lasers, railguns, missiles, and weapons the Council had no names for all struck at once. The shields held for 10 seconds, 20 seconds, 30 seconds. The builders of the station would have been proud. Then the shields failed. But the humans did not destroy the station. Instead, hundreds of small pods launched from the fleet. They clamped onto the hull with magnetic grippers. Cutting torches burned through the armor, and human marines poured inside. The Council security forces tried to resist. They were trained for ceremonial duties and minor disputes. They had stun weapons and light armor. They had never faced real soldiers before. The human marines moved through the corridors like shadows. They wore powered armor that made them stronger and faster than any Council species. Their weapons fired rounds that could punch through walls. Their helmets had sensors that could see through smoke and darkness. They worked in perfect coordination, communicating through encrypted channels, covering each other with practice skill. Within 2 hours, every critical section of the station was under human control. Captain Greg Foster led the assault on the Council chambers themselves. His team of 20 Marines moved carefully through the last corridor, checking every corner, every doorway. They had trained for this mission dozens of times in simulations. Now it was real. The doors to the chambers were made of some metal that scanners could not identify. Greg placed breaching charges on the hinges, then stepped back. All teams, we breach in 3, 2, 1. The explosion was surprisingly quiet in the vacuum of the damaged corridor. The massive doors fell inward with a crash. Greg's team rushed through, weapons ready. The 12 Council members were huddled behind overturned furniture. These beings who ruled the galaxy looked small and frightened. Frex's mandibles clicked rapidly, a sign of panic in his species. The Zorath representatives were pulsing with colors that indicated fear. Even the proud Vendar merchants looked defeated. Secure them, Greg ordered. Non-lethal rounds only. Admiral wants them alive. The Council members did not resist. They simply stood with their appendages raised in various gestures of surrender. Within minutes they were restrained with gentle but firm bindings, and Greg's team was escorting them through the corridors toward the docking bay. Admiral Cole arrived on the station an hour later. He walked through the corridors escorted by a full platoon of Marines, but he did not need them. The few Council personnel still free were hiding or surrendering peacefully. The station was completely under human control. He entered what had been the Council chambers. The 12 leaders were seated in a row, their restraints removed but Marines standing behind each one. Cole stood before them, his uniform perfect despite the battle, his face showing nothing. "You killed Ambassador Daniel Hayes because you thought we would submit," he said quietly. "You thought we were weak, that we would accept your judgment, that we would bow to your ancient authority." "We made a mistake," Counselor Drath said quickly. The merchant could see which way this was going. "We underestimated your capabilities. We can negotiate. We can find terms." "No," Cole said firmly. "The time for negotiation ended when you executed an unarmed diplomat. That was your choice. Now you will live with the consequences." Thex, the young Zorath, spoke carefully. "If you wanted us dead, we would be dead already. You have demands." Cole nodded slowly. "The Galactic Council will be dissolved. Every species will govern itself. All restrictions on developing civilizations will be removed. All genetic control protocols will be abolished. And Earth will establish a new order in this galaxy, one based on mutual respect, not domination by ancient species. You would replace our tyranny with your own," Frex said bitterly. "No," Cole corrected. "We will create a federation of equals. But it will be truly equal. No species will have veto power over others. No ancient races will control the young ones. Every world will have a voice. Every civilization will be free to grow at its own pace. And if we refuse?" asked another Council member. Cole's expression did not change. "Then we will continue what we started here. We will dismantle your civilization world by world, until there is nothing left but rubble and memories. We have planned for this. We have prepared for this. We can fight for decades if necessary. Can you?" The silence that followed was complete. The Council members looked at each other, using their various methods of communication. Finally, Vrek spoke. "How long have you been planning this war?" "Since the day we met you," Cole admitted. "Ambassador Hayes hoped we would never need these plans. He believed in peace. He believed you would accept us as equals. He died believing that was possible. But we are not naive. We knew you might reject us, that you might see us as a threat. So we prepared." "You planned for war while pretending to seek peace?" Frex asked. "We planned for war while genuinely seeking peace," Cole corrected. "Those are not contradictory. Hope for the best. Prepare for the worst. It is how humans have survived for thousands of years. Thex spoke again. What happens now? Now we send a message to every council world. You will appear on broadcast and explain that the old order is over, that resistance is futile, that a new federation is being formed. You will recommend that your species join peacefully. If they listen, there will be no more violence. If they do not listen, he did not finish the sentence. He did not need to. Through the viewport behind him, Vex Prime still burned. And if we refuse to make this broadcast, Vex asked, then we will find others who will, Cole said simply. You are leaders, but you are not irreplaceable. Every species has others who could speak for them, others who might be more reasonable. The threat was clear: cooperate or be replaced, perhaps permanently. Part 4 news of what happened at Vex Prime spread across the galaxy faster than light itself. Within days, every species knew that humanity had devastated the neutral world, captured the council station, and taken the 12 leaders prisoner. The reactions were as varied as the species themselves. Some were terrified. These were the species who had grown comfortable under council rule, who had forgotten how to defend themselves. They saw the burning planet and imagined their own world suffering the same fate. Some were excited. These were the younger species, the ones who had been held back by council restrictions. They had chafed under the rules that limited their growth, their technology, their expansion. Now they saw opportunity in the chaos, and some saw only profit or power to be gained. They began calculating which side would benefit them most. The Krell Empire was the first to respond with force. Chancellor Vrex had been their leader, and the Krell valued honor and hierarchy above all else. They could not allow this insult to stand. Within a week, they had mobilized the largest military fleet in council space. 3,000 warships gathered at the Krell home system. They were impressive vessels, built during countless small conflicts over the centuries. The Krell had fought pirates, put down rebellions, and maintained order across dozens of worlds. They were experienced. They were confident. They were wrong. The Battle of Krell Prime began when the human fleet arrived in system. 400 human ships against 3,000 Krell vessels. The numbers seemed impossible. Every tactical analysis said humanity should retreat. Every simulation said they would be destroyed. Admiral Cole gave different orders. All ships deploy quantum mines. Activate electronic warfare systems. Prepare relativistic kill vehicles. Captain Lisa Grant, commanding the Valiant, felt her stomach tighten as she gave the orders to her crew. You heard the Admiral. Launch mines on my mark. The quantum mines were humanity's secret weapon. They did not explode. Instead, they destabilized the fabric of space itself, making it impossible to use jump drives. Any ship caught in their field was trapped, unable to retreat, unable to call for reinforcements. The battlefield became a cage. The Krell fleet charged forward, their weapons firing. Energy beams and plasma bolts filled the space between ships. The human vessels took hits, their armor buckling under the assault. Several human ships exploded, their crews dying instantly. But then the electronic warfare began. Human ships broadcast signals that the Krell had never encountered. Their communication systems went haywire. Their targeting computers started giving false readings. Their automated defense systems began identifying friendly ships as enemies. Within minutes, the organized Krell formation collapsed into chaos. Krell ships fired on each other, their computers telling them they were shooting at human vessels. Captains shouted orders that their crews never received because the communication channels were jammed. Entire squadrons broke formation and fled in random directions, trying to escape the invisible assault on their systems. And then humanity deployed the relativistic kill vehicles. These were the simplest and most terrible weapons in the human arsenal. Just dense slugs of metal, accelerated to 99% of light speed. At that velocity, they hit with the force of antimatter explosions. Shields meant nothing. Armor meant nothing. When a relativistic kill vehicle hit a ship, that ship simply ceased to exist, vaporized in a flash of energy that outshone nearby stars. The Krell fleet tried to fight back. Their captains were brave, their crews were skilled, but they were fighting a kind of war they had never seen before. A war where the rules they knew did not apply. A war where their enemy used weapons and tactics that should not exist. 6 hours after it began, the battle was over. 3,000 Krell ships had been reduced to debris and radiation. Fewer than 100 human vessels had been destroyed. The math should not have worked that way. But humanity had not fought a fair battle. They had fought to win. Captain Lisa Grant sat in her command chair, staring at the tactical display showing scattered wreckage where the Krell fleet had been. Her hands were shaking. Jake stood beside her, his face pale. "We just killed hundreds of thousands," he said quietly. "We did," Lisa agreed. Her voice was hollow. "And we will probably kill hundreds of thousands more before this is over." "This is what they forced us to become." "Ma'am?" Jake asked. "Warriors, killers, we wanted to explore the galaxy. We wanted to learn and grow and meet new friends among the stars. Instead, they made us into this." She gestured at the destruction on the screen. "But we will see it through. Because the alternative is slavery. Or extinction. Not every species chose to fight. The Vendar, always practical, saw the numbers and made a different choice. Within days of the Battle of Krell Prime, they opened their borders to human ships. They offered intelligence about Council military positions. They negotiated a separate peace, becoming the first Council species to officially recognize the new order. Their merchant fleets quickly adapted. Soon, Vendar ships carried human goods alongside their traditional cargo. Trade routes shifted. New agreements formed. The Vendar understood that the galaxy was changing, and they intended to profit from that change rather than be destroyed by it. The younger species watched and learned. If the mighty Krell could be defeated so completely, what chance did anyone have? Better to join the humans than fight them. Better to embrace change than be crushed by it. The Talros Confederation was the first to officially request human protection. They were a species of bird-like beings who had been restricted to their home system for centuries because the Council deemed them too aggressive. Now they declared independence and asked Earth to guarantee their freedom. The Silex Unity followed, then the Barathi clans, then a dozen others. Within weeks, a wave of rebellion swept across Council space. Species that had been suppressed for generations suddenly saw their chance. The old order was crumbling, but one species chose a different path. The Zorath, telepathic and philosophical, decided to negotiate rather than fight or submit. Thex, who had been released from custody as a gesture of goodwill, returned to his homeworld. He brought with him recordings of everything he had witnessed: the destruction of Vex Prime, the capture of the station, the defeat of the Krell fleet, but also something else, something that gave him hope. He showed his people how carefully humanity had evacuated the civilians from Vex Prime, how they had used non-lethal force whenever possible during the station assault, how they had offered terms rather than simple destruction. These humans could have killed everyone. They had the power, but they had chosen restraint. The Zorath Conclave, the collective consciousness of billions of telepathic minds, considered this carefully. They reached a decision. They would meet with the humans. They would talk. The meeting took place in neutral space aboard a Zorath vessel that looked more like a living creature than a ship. Admiral Cole came aboard with a small escort. No weapons, no Marines, just trust and hope that the Zorath truly wanted peace. Thex met him at the airlock. "Welcome, Admiral. My people wish to speak with you." They walked through corridors that pulsed with bioluminescence, past chambers where Zorath floated in meditation. Finally, they reached a large spherical room where hundreds of Zorath gathered, but they spoke with one voice, the combined will of billions channeled through Thex. "You have proven your point," the collective mind said through Thex. "The old order has fallen. The Council is broken, but what will you build to replace it?" Cole had prepared for many responses: demands, threats, defiance. But this question caught him slightly off guard. It was the question he had been asking himself every night since Vex Prime burned. "A federation," he said carefully, "a true alliance of equals, where no species has the power to dictate to others, where strength brings responsibility to protect, not the right to rule. And if a species refuses to join, if they see you as conquerors rather than liberators, then they will be left alone," Cole replied. "As long as they do not threaten others. We do not seek an empire. We seek peace. But we will enforce that peace if we must." The Zorath were silent for a long moment, their collective mind considering. Then Thex spoke again. "We will join your federation. But we make one condition. We will watch you, humanity. We will use our gifts to monitor your intentions. If you become what you fought against, if you use your power to dominate rather than protect, we will be the first to oppose you." Cole felt a weight lift from his shoulders. "We welcome that oversight. We do not trust ourselves with absolute power. That is exactly why we need partners, not subjects. We need other species to tell us when we are wrong, to stop us if we go too far. Then we have an accord, the Zarath mind said. We will help you build this new federation, and we will help you stay true to your principles. But the war was not over. The core council worlds, the original 12 species who had founded the Order 10,000 years ago, refused to surrender. They had lost the Krell fleet. They had lost dozens of member species, but they still controlled the heart of their ancient empire. They gathered their remaining forces for one final battle. 5,000 ships, the combined might of 10 species, everything they had left. They would make their stand at Zenthar, the oldest of the council worlds, a planet that had been inhabited for 15,000 years. Part 5, the Grand Armada, assembled at Zenthar like nothing the galaxy had seen in millennia. 5,000 warships from 10 different species, representing the last military strength of the Galactic Council. They formed a defensive sphere around the ancient world, their weapons charged and ready. This would be their final stand. The human fleet arrived exactly when Admiral Cole said they would. 400 capital ships, 800 support vessels, 2,000 fighters. Every human warship that could fly was here. This battle would decide the future of the galaxy, but before a single shot was fired, something unexpected happened. Admiral Cole broadcast a message on all frequencies. Every ship in both fleets received it. Every being on Zenthar heard it. Every station monitoring the confrontation across the galaxy picked it up. Attention all Council forces. This is Admiral Richard Cole of Earth. Before we begin what will certainly be the most devastating battle in galactic history, I want you to see something. The transmission changed. Now it showed the Council station still in orbit around the ruined Vex Prime. Inside the main chamber, the 12 Council members appeared on screen. They looked tired but unharmed. Vrek stepped forward to speak. To all Council forces, stand down. The war is over. We have been defeated. Angry clicks came from Vrex's translator, but he continued. Not just militarily defeated. We have been shown the truth. Humanity could have killed us. They could have destroyed the station. They could have devastated our homeworlds. They had the power and the justification. We executed their ambassador. We declared ourselves their enemies. We gave them every reason to annihilate us. Thek spoke next, his telepathic voice calm and measured. But they did not destroy us. They evacuated civilians before attacking Vex Prime. They used non-lethal force whenever possible. They offered terms rather than simple slaughter. We thought them primitive and violent. We were wrong. They understand war better than we do precisely because they have not forgotten its costs. Councillor Drath added practical weight. The economic projections are clear. Continued resistance will destroy what remains of our civilization. Billions will suffer. For what? Pride? The old order is already gone. We can either help build something better or die trying to preserve something that no longer exists. One by one, the other council members spoke, some with bitterness in their voices, some with resignation, but all reaching the same conclusion. The Galactic Council had fallen. The age they had ruled was over. Fighting now would accomplish nothing but death and destruction. Finally, Vrek spoke again. I ordered Ambassador Daniel Hayes executed. It is the greatest shame of my existence. I believed we were showing strength. Instead, we showed cruelty. We showed arrogance. We showed exactly why our old order needed to end. I cannot undo what I did, but I can ensure his death meant something, that we learned from our mistake. The transmission ended. Admiral Cole's face returned. You have a choice, he said to the assembled armada. You can fight and die for a cause already lost, or you can help us build something better. We do not ask you to surrender your dignity. We do not ask you to accept defeat as permanent shame. We ask you to join us as equals in a new federation, one where no species rules over others, where the young are not held back by the old, where justice is not decided by ancient privilege. For long minutes, nothing happened. 5,000 council ships faced the human fleet in tense silence. Weapons were charged on both sides. Shields at maximum. Everyone waited for someone to make the first move. Then, slowly, one Krell warship powered down its weapons. Then another. Then 10. Then 100. The dam broke. Within an hour, every ship in the Grand Armada had stood down. Not because they were cowards. Not because they had lost the will to fight. but because they recognized the truth in what Admiral Cole and the council members had said. The war was over. Had been over since Vex Prime burned. Fighting now would be suicide, and it would accomplish nothing. Captain Lisa Grant watched from the bridge of the Valiant as thousands of alien warships simply stopped. No battle, no bloodshed, just the quiet end of an age. We did it, Jake said beside her, his voice full of wonder. We actually did it. We fought the entire galaxy and won. No, Lisa corrected gently. We fought until they understood we could not be controlled. That is different from winning. Real victory comes next, in what we build with them. The Treaty of Zenthar was negotiated over the following 3 months. Representatives from every species met on neutral ground, working together to create a new structure for galactic civilization. The discussions were long and sometimes heated, but they were discussions, not ultimatums. The old Galactic Council was officially dissolved. In its place, the Galactic Federation was established. Earth was one of 12 founding members, but critically, no species held more power than any other. Decisions were made by vote, with strong protections for minority rights built into every law. The treaty abolished all genetic control protocols. Every species could grow and develop at its own pace. Military restrictions on younger species were removed. Trade became truly free rather than controlled by ancient merchant guilds. The future was open to everyone, not just the privileged few. The Krell, despite their devastating defeat, were among the first to join. Their new leader, a younger warrior named Crix, understood that their rigid hierarchy had made them unable to adapt. Humanity beat us because they value skill and innovation over tradition and rank. We can learn from this. We must learn from this. The younger species joined enthusiastically. The Talros, the Silix, the Barathi. Dozens of others who had been held back for centuries suddenly found themselves with voices that mattered, with futures that were theirs to shape. Within a year, the Federation had 40 members. Within 5 years, over 100. Species that had existed on the edges of council space, barely noticed and barely helped, now had the same rights as ancient empires. It was chaotic at first. Arguments happened. Disputes arose. But they were resolved through discussion and compromise, not through force. Admiral Cole retired from active service. He had done what he set out to do. The war was over. The new order was established. Now he could finally rest, but they asked him to teach at the new Federation Naval Academy. The school was established on New Haven, a world that had been terraformed through the combined efforts of 20 species. Here, young officers from hundreds of worlds learned together. Humans studied alongside Krell and Zorath and Vendar and countless others. Cole's first lecture was simple. He stood before a classroom of mixed species and asked one question. Why do we have a military in a time of peace? A young Krell officer raised his claw. To defend against threats. Partially correct, Cole said. Anyone else? A human cadet spoke up. To maintain order. Also partially correct. The real answer is simpler and more important. We have a military to protect those who cannot protect themselves, to ensure that no species can dominate another through force, to stand between the strong and the weak, not on the side of the strong. The moment we forget that, the moment we use our power to conquer rather than protect, we become what we fought against, he paused, looking at each young face in the classroom. Some of you are from species that fought against humanity during the war. Some of you lost family members in those battles. I will not apologize for defending my species. But I will say this, we are not enemies anymore. We are allies, partners, friends. The Federation only works if we trust each other. If we remember that our strength comes from our differences, not despite them. Captain Lisa Grant took command of the Federation Defense Force. Her job was to ensure that the military remained strong, but always accountable to civilian leadership. She created protocols for intervention in disputes, guidelines for peacekeeping operations, rules of engagement that protected civilians first and foremost. We must never forget what we did at Vex Prime, she told her senior officers during a training exercise. We devastated a world to make a point. It was necessary. It was justified. But it should haunt us. The day we stop being troubled by the violence we can unleash is the day we become monsters. We are powerful, but we use that power carefully. President Helen Morrison served 2 more terms, then stepped down. She lived to see something remarkable. A non-human elected to lead Earth's government. The Zorath named Thex, who had become a naturalized Earth citizen, won the election by a comfortable margin. It was a moment that would have been impossible to imagine just years before. A species that had been enemies now trusted one of the former enemy to lead them. It proved that the Federation was working. That trust could be built even from the ashes of war. On the 50th anniversary of Daniel Hayes's execution, leaders from across the galaxy gathered at Vex Prime. The planet had been carefully restored over decades of joint effort. It was once again green and blue, though different than before. New forests had been planted. New oceans filled basins that had been cracked by the kinetic impacts. It was a living monument to both destruction and renewal. An elderly Admiral Cole stood before the assembled crowd. Beside him were Vrex, Thex, and other former council members, all old now, all carrying the weight of their choices. 50 years ago, Ambassador Daniel Hayes died believing in peace, Cole said, his voice still strong despite his age. We fought a war to prove that